Mommy, am I an illegitimate child? I was adjusting my young son Ian's varsity jacket when he tilted his face up, his clear eyes filled with confusion. My fingertips froze mid-motion. During recess at preschool today, the new assistant teacher told the other kids that I'm the child of a third party. Mommy, what is a third party? In San Francisco, the Bay Area's elite circles are a tangled web of connections. My name is Sylvia. I am 22 and of Chinese descent. The Su family and the He conglomerate held a cross-border partnership worth billions of dollars. As arranged by our families, I had become engaged to He Jingyao, the He family's third son, during my sophomore year of college. The plan was for us to marry once I finished my degree at Berkeley, but the distance between countries slowly tore away the hypocritical facade of this business union. On New Year's Eve, I prepared 2 beef Wellingtons in my apartment and waited for He Jingyao, only to receive a phone call filled with the sounds of heavy, intimate breathing. I quietly started recording. Through the receiver, I heard him promising another woman that he would ask his family to call off our engagement the very next day. Moments later, she sent a photo of them in a close embrace. Even though she quickly deleted it, the screen recording was already safely saved in my phone's gallery. The woman's name was Layla, an Asian girl who frequented the Bay Area social scene, and she sent a provocative message: "The one who isn't loved is the third party." I replied coolly, "Understood," and booked a flight back to San Francisco that same night. Upon landing, I immediately called my older brother, Su Jinyang. Since the Su family held the controlling interest in the partnership, and He Jingyao was determined to break off the engagement for his mistress, there was no point in getting entangled in emotional drama. Instead, we seized the opportunity to secure the maximum benefit for the Su family. We finalized a plan and invited the elders of both the He and Su families to dinner at a private waterfront club in San Francisco. The atmosphere in the private dining room was thick with unspoken tension. The He family elders kept trying to play matchmaker, urging He Jingyao to serve me food. He Jingyao remained cold and evasive throughout, while I played the part of the understanding fiancé, smoothing things over for him at every turn. After a few rounds of drinks, Layla burst in uninvited and publicly declared herself to be He Jingyao's true love. The high-end custom diamond ring on her ring finger, one that should have been mine, glittered brilliantly under the lights. Even more shocking was when He Jingyao stood up and admitted, right in front of both families, that he and Layla had already secretly registered their marriage. I seized the moment to release the recordings and intimate photos I had prepared. The He family lost all faith, and my father stormed out in a rage. Feigning devastation, I leaned on my eldest brother's shoulder while whispering to finalize the terms for the post-conflict division of interests. In the aftermath, the joint venture between the Su and He families was completely frozen, and the He group's stock price plummeted. Using my heartbreak as a pretext to stay out of the public eye, I waited quietly for my brother to renegotiate the profit-sharing terms. Under immense business pressure, the He family repeatedly tried to mend fences, and I attended a charity gala they hosted as agreed. At the event, his mother publicly scolded the pregnant Layla, making it clear through her words that she still regarded me as the family's true daughter-in-law. Throughout the evening, she kept me by her side as she mingled with the socialite circles of Silicon Valley and San Francisco, leaving Layla isolated and exposed to the scornful gazes of the crowd. After a protracted negotiation, the Su family resumed the partnership, with the He group paying a hefty price in equity and cash compensation. I returned to Berkeley to complete my studies. Not long after, He Jingyao had a falling out with his family and moved out of their mansion with Layla. However, their happy days were short-lived. Unable to endure a life of financial hardship, Layla absconded with He Jingyao's remaining savings, abandoned their newborn son, He Kai, and fled to Europe with her first love. 3 years flew by. At 26, I returned home with my master's degree. My family began plotting my next arranged marriage, targeting Leo, the head of the Lee group, who was nearly 50 years old. He was notorious for his chaotic private life and had several illegitimate children. After meeting him once, I resolved that I would absolutely not jump into that fire pit. At a high society cocktail party, I deliberately engineered a situation where He Jingyao's mother could overhear me turning down Leo. I then slipped into the restroom and, under the cover of running water, put on a convincing, tearful performance, acting the part of a woman who still couldn't let go of He Jingyao. She fell for the ruse just as I'd hoped, and proceeded to vigorously urge me to remarry into the He family. To avoid Leo, I took the initiative to reach out to He Jingyao, who was living in an old apartment in Oakland. I frequently visited, bringing toys, children's clothes, and fresh groceries, and took He Kai to science museums and amusement parks. Having grown up without a mother's love, He Kai quickly came to rely on me. I kept hinting to He Jingyao about the rare educational opportunities offered by the Bay Area's top private schools, while also occasionally mentioning Leo's persistent harassment of me. Under my careful guidance, He Jingyao finally decided to set aside his pride and return to the He family with his son. We held a wedding, and our two corporate empires were once again united. After the wedding, I gave birth to our younger son, Ian. Although He Kai knew I wasn't his biological mother, he trusted and relied on me deeply. Life was peaceful until Layla secretly returned to the country. She forged a resume claiming credentials from prestigious schools and used connections to land a job as an extracurricular assistant at the private preschool the boys attended, where she deliberately tried to turn the children against me and hurt them. After hearing what Ian had to say, I suppressed the chill running down my spine. I instructed the nanny to keep a close watch on the boys while I contacted the other parents. The preschool catered to the children of the Bay Area's elite, and all staff underwent rigorous background checks. I had kept a full dossier on Layla, documenting her chaotic romantic history and the time she had absconded with funds. The next morning, armed with printed evidence, I arranged to meet all the parents at a tea restaurant near the school. I publicly revealed Layla's true identity, laying out the facts. Her forged resume, her history as a homewrecker, and the fact that she had abandoned her own biological son. The parents were outraged and collectively pressured the school to fire her immediately. With the parents united in their stance, Layla was dismissed by the school without me having to confront her personally. As I drove past the school entrance, I saw her standing by the roadside, looking disheveled and wretched. I rolled down the window and stared at her coldly. Her eyes were wild. She spewed venomous insults and threatened to make our family pay. I returned home, and He Jingyao and I began organizing the evidence regarding the assets she had stolen years ago, preparing to file a police report and a lawsuit. But none of us expected that Layla had suffered a complete mental breakdown. Outside the police station, He Jingyao was crossing the street to retrieve some documents from his car when a sedan came speeding toward him, violently knocking him down. The driver was Layla. She stepped out, brandished a dagger, and lunged at me, only to be subdued on the spot by the police. Suspecting she was under the influence of illicit drugs, the officers called in the narcotics squad to intervene. He Jingyao sustained severe injuries and was rushed to the ICU for emergency treatment. As I kept watch outside the intensive care unit, memories of the past few years flooded my mind. This marriage, born of mutual interest and entangled in betrayal, scheming, and desire, had ultimately left nothing but devastation in its wake. Chapter 2. In the corridor outside the ICU at San Francisco General Hospital, the cold, white lights burned through the night. I sat on a bench, wrapped in a black cashmere coat, clutching my phone. He Jingyao had been lying in the intensive care unit for a full 14 days since the accident. I had settled He Kai and Ian in the Su family villa, under the 24-hour care of a trusted Filipino housekeeper. The two children still did not know their father was hovering on the brink of death. He family relatives took turns visiting the hospital. While they wore expressions of sorrow, every word they spoke was an attempt to probe into the shares of the He consortium that He Jingyao held. That afternoon, the attending physician approached me with a grave expression. "MS. Sue, I am so sorry. We did everything we could. Persistent intracranial hemorrhaging and multi-organ failure resuscitation efforts were unsuccessful." The moment the devastating news landed, my shoulders trembled slightly, and my eyes quickly welled up with red. Only I knew how much of the sorrow in my eyes was genuine and how much was a performance for the onlookers. He Jingyao's funeral was held at a cemetery in the suburbs of San Francisco. A drizzling rain fell, and a gray, oppressive sky hung over the grounds. The entire He clan was present. The sea of black suits and dresses formed a somber, dark mass. clad in a black dress with red, swollen eyes. I held He Kai's hand while shielding little Ian. Both children were trembling as they wept. He Jingyao's parents, forced to endure the agony of burying their own son, stood before the headstone, tears streaming down their faces. The solemn mourning was short-lived. He Jingfeng, the eldest brother, could not wait to speak, shattering the silence of the cemetery. Rain soaked his shoulders, yet there was not a trace of grief in his eyes, only a raw, greedy hunger for wealth. Mom and Dad, now that Jingyao is gone, the portion of He family shares held in his name should rightfully be reclaimed by the main family. We certainly can't let them fall into the hands of an outsider. He Jingyao's sister-in-law immediately stepped forward to chime in. Exactly. Suweiya bears a different surname, after all, and the two children are far too young. Handing the shares over to her would be too risky. At these words, a murmur of discussion rippled through the crowd. Many of the He family relatives nodded in agreement, casting scrutinizing glances my way. I wiped the tears from my cheeks and looked at He Jingfeng with reddened eyes. My voice was hoarse from weeping, yet every word was clear. When you speak of an outsider, are you referring to me? And what about He Kai and Ian? Are they outsiders too? They are Jingyao's own biological sons. He Jingfeng was left speechless by my retort. He averted his gaze, unable to meet my eyes. Even He Jingyao's parents lowered their heads, avoiding my stare. My heart turned cold. There was a reason He Jingyao had been unwilling to return to the family fold while he was alive. This entire clan cared nothing for his life or death, they only coveted the lucrative assets he held. The funeral isn't over yet. Out of respect for the deceased, this is no place for an argument. I pulled Ian closer to me. As for the shares, we can move the discussion to the He family estate. We'll bring our lawyers and sit down to talk it over properly. After saying this, I instructed the driver to take the two children back to the Su family home. I changed into a sharp, tailored suit, then, accompanied by the Su family's personal lawyer and my older brother, Su Jinyang, drove to the He family estate. In the living room of the opulent, vintage-style mansion, the He family relatives had already gathered. Every eye was fixed on me, like a pack of jackals waiting to tear into their prey. The lawyer spread a copy of the will, certified by a California notary, across the mahogany coffee table, placing the clearly visible embossed seal right before everyone's eyes. Mr. He Jingyao executed a formal will during his lifetime. All of his shares in the He group are to be divided equally among Suweiya, He Kai, and Ian. Regarding the shares held by the two minor children, their mother, Suweiya, is to act as trustee and exercise voting rights until they come of age. As the words left his lips, the living room erupted in an uproar. He Jingfeng slammed his hand against the sofa armrest, his face flushing a deep crimson. Impossible! This will must be a forgery. Suweiya, you coerced Jingyao into signing this, didn't you? This will was executed 3 years ago. There were 2 third-party witnesses, and a complete video record of the notarization is on file, ready to be submitted to the California courts for verification at any time, the lawyer replied calmly. He Jingyao's mother's lips trembled as she looked at me, her eyes filled with bitter resentment, yet she knew full well that, legally speaking, they had no grounds to contest it. I signaled the lawyer to proceed with the next document. Mr. Su Jinyang is gifting the 4% of He Group's circulating shares, which he acquired on the secondary market, to Ms. Suweiya, free of charge. As the pages were turned one by one, the color drained from the faces of the He family members. I leisurely picked up the glass of lemonade from the table and spoke in a calm, measured tone. When the He family first became betrothed to the Su family, the engagement gifts included a 5% stake in the He Group. Add to that the 2% allocated to me in Jingyao's will, the 4% held in trust for the 2 children, and the 4% transferred to me by Big Brother. I now hold a total of 15% of the He Group's equity. That figure landed in the living room like a massive boulder. He Jingfeng staggered back half a step before collapsing dejectedly onto the sofa. He Jingyao's father clutched his chest, his breathing ragged and his body swaying unsteadily. Sister-in-law, he made one last desperate attempt. So what if you hold so many shares? The He family's main branch still controls the majority stake at the shareholders' meeting. Eldest brother Su Jinyang stepped forward, his tone icy. The He Group's single largest source of revenue right now is the cross-border trade partnership with the Su family. If the Su family unilaterally terminates all cooperation, a massive volume of the He Group's orders will instantly be voided, leaving them with a mountain of unsold inventory. You can all weigh the consequences for yourselves. He placed a stack of business cards on the edge of the coffee table. Anyone wishing to offload their He Group shares can contact my assistant. The buyout offer stands only until the US stock market opens next week. A deathly silence filled the room. The relatives, who had been so arrogant just moments ago, now looked ashen-faced, unable to utter a single word of rebuttal. Stepping out of the He family estate, I found the rain had stopped. Slivers of sunlight were breaking through the clouds. Once inside the car, I leaned against the rear window and let out a long, weary breath. Su Jinyang turned his head toward me. The next step is preparing for the shareholders' meeting. I just never expected He Jingyaro to die like that. I gazed at the palm trees flashing past the window and shook my head slightly. I never wanted his life. But human greed always pushes situations in unpredictable directions. Chapter 3. With the He Group's annual shareholders' meeting just a week away, undercurrents of tension were swirling through the San Francisco Bay Area's financial circles. Holding a 15% stake in the He Group, I was the largest individual shareholder. As news of this quietly leaked, investment banks and capital firms flooded my inbox, trying to gauge where I stood. The Su family was far from calm, either. On the surface, my eldest brother, Su Jinyang, and I were allies, but I knew full well that where interests intertwine, there are no permanent allies. Back at the Su family villa, He Kai was sitting at an easel on the terrace, sketching. Colored pencils were scattered across the table. Ian lay nearby, quietly watching his older brother draw. Both children were gradually moving past the grief of their father's death, though He Kai would still occasionally stare blankly at his canvas. I stood by the doorway for a moment, choosing not to interrupt. I didn't want to drag the children into the high-stakes battle for shares just yet. That evening, Su Jinyang asked to meet me at a private, seaside club in the Bay Area. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Pacific Ocean shimmered with deep blue waves. "I need you to vote for me at the shareholders' meeting," Su Jinyang said, his tone matter-of-fact as he sipped his whiskey. "If we join forces and secure 40% of the voting rights, we can take complete control of the He Group. Once I'm firmly established as the company's actual controller, I can guarantee your compensation and the children's interests." I gently traced the rim of my cold glass with my fingertips, keeping my expression unreadable. I used to think my eldest brother simply wanted to swallow up the He family business, but recently, a private investigator helped me uncover several leads. It turns out Su Jinyang was the one orchestrating the push for a marriage alliance between Leo and me back then. It was also my eldest brother working behind the scenes to help Layla secure a forged resume and infiltrate the kindergarten upon her return. From start to finish, he has been treating everyone like pawns. I lowered my gaze, feigning hesitation. "This is a major matter. I need time to think it over." Believing I was wavering and letting his guard down, Su Jinyang patted my shoulder. "Weya, we're siblings. I'd never harm you. If we win this round, the Su family's footprint in North America will expand significantly." After we parted ways, I arranged a late-night meeting with the second eldest brother, Su Jinshang. He had long focused on overseas cross-border technology projects. A composed and restrained man, he saw right through our eldest brother's reckless ambition. In a dim booth at a cafe, I laid out all the evidence I had gathered. Eldest brother wants to use the He family to bolster his own power. He's even willing to exploit Layla and use my child as a bargaining chip. Su Jinshang leafed through the documents, his brows furrowed. I'd long sensed his methods were too aggressive, though I lacked concrete proof. If he takes the helm, marking the start of the vote for the new leader. Those in favor of Mr. Su Jinyang taking over the He group, please raise your hands. Su Jinyang raised his arm confidently, and the shareholders he had courted followed suit one after another. When the tally was complete, the figure stood at 35%. He turned to look at me, his eyes urging me to act. Yet I remained firmly in my seat, hands clasped over my knees, making no move whatsoever. The smile on Su Jinyang's face froze instantly, his pupils contracting sharply as he hissed, "Weya, what are you doing?" The vote counter continued. Those in favor of Mr. Su Jinshang taking over the He group, please raise your hands. Slowly, I raised my hand. Su Jinshang's allies and a number of undecided small to medium shareholders followed suit. The final tally reached 40%. A low murmur of astonishment rippled through the hall. Su Jinyang leaned forward, his chest heaving violently. He stared fixedly at me, his voice low and strained as he demanded, "Why? Weren't we allies? I would have given you anything you wanted." "Big brother, not everything can be bought with self-interest," I said calmly. "You treated me, He Jingyao, and even the two children as pawns for your own assent. The moment you did that, our alliance ceased to exist." The event host officially announced Su Jinshang as the new person in actual control of the He group. After the event concluded, Su Jinyang blocked my path before I could leave. The veneer of composure had vanished from his face, and his eyes were bloodshot. "You had this all planned out from the start. You were plotting against me even before He Jingyao died. I didn't engineer his death, but I saw your ambition for what it was," I said, looking him in the eye. "You colluded with Layla, fabricated a background to bring her back to the country, deliberately provoked her into causing trouble, and used her instability to eliminate He Jingyao only to turn around and try to push me into the fire pit with Leo. I have evidence of every single one of these actions." Su Jinyang shuddered, the color draining completely from his face. "Did you think I hadn't kept copies of those chat logs and the intermediary's testimony?" I slowly took out my phone. "I've already handed them over to the California police. They should be coming for you soon." No sooner had I spoken than two plainclothes officers walked into the conference room, presented an arrest warrant, and approached Su Jinyang. He stared at me in disbelief. As the police led him away, his voice, filled with furious resentment, echoed through the empty corridor. Stepping out of the He Corporation building, I felt the afternoon sunlight warm my shoulders. A notification popped up on my phone, a message from He Kai containing a photo of a painting he had just finished. It depicted the three of us, him, Ian, and myself, with the San Francisco Bay as the backdrop. I gazed at the screen and let out a soft breath. The high-stakes game of power and wealth had finally reached its conclusion, but the life awaiting me and my two children was just beginning. Chapter 4. Su Jinyang's arrest sent shockwaves through the North American Chinese business community. The police compiled a comprehensive set of evidence, including emails exchanged with the intermediary, transfer records showing payments to help Layla fabricate her academic credentials and identity, and chat logs documenting his incitement of Layla's revenge plot. The chain of evidence was complete and irrefutable. The case entered the judicial process, though a trial date was not expected anytime soon. The Su family also underwent a massive upheaval. Upon learning of his eldest son's actions, my father aged visibly overnight. He secluded himself for a long period before finally handing over the majority of the group's affairs to the new head of the family, Su Jinshang. I temporarily entrusted the daily operations of the He Corporation to professional managers, choosing not to step into the complex vortex of corporate administration. Rather than sitting in conference rooms engaging in power plays, I preferred to devote my time to He Kai and Ian. San Francisco enjoyed a mild climate in late autumn, and the maple leaves in our backyard had turned a brilliant golden red. He Kai, who was about to enter high school, spent his days immersed in his art studio. A massive easel stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, with paint scattered across the floor. Meanwhile, Ian ran back and forth across the lawn, clutching a football. One evening, I walked to the studio doorway carrying 2 mugs of hot cocoa. He Kai paused his brush. The canvas displayed a sunset over the San Francisco Bay, rendered in soft, gentle hues. "So, have you given any thought to your high school plans?" I asked softly, leaning against the doorframe. Hikai put down his charcoal pencil, his fingertips still smudged with blue-gray pigment, and spoke with unwavering conviction. I want to pursue art. I plan to apply to the high school program at the San Francisco Art Institute, and later on, I'd like to travel and paint across Europe. Things like business and equity, I have no interest in them. I had anticipated his answer. Hikai had always been sensitive and perceptive. He felt a natural detachment from numbers and business negotiations, pouring his entire passion into painting instead. That's fine. I nodded. The shares your father left you in his will be fully transferred to your name once you come of age. They are your assets. You can choose to hold on to them or sell them to fund your artistic ambitions. The decision is entirely yours. I won't force you to take over the conglomerate. Hikai was momentarily stunned. He lowered his head and spoke softly. Stepmother, thank you. Many of our relatives say I ought to shoulder the burden of the He family and safeguard the estate. Your life takes precedence over the family fortune. I reached out and gently patted his shoulder. Wealth should be a safety net, not a shackle. He looked up at me, the heavy burden he had carried for so long finally lifting from his eyes. The peace didn't last long. Su Jinyang, still in custody, refused to admit defeat. He had his lawyer submit a request to contact me, hoping for a private settlement. The lawyer called to convey his terms. He was willing to relinquish all commercial interests if I would withdraw the key evidence in exchange for a suspended sentence. I flatly refused. 2 days later, Su Jinyan's father, my father, invited me to the old family estate for dinner. In the vast dining room, there were only 3 of us. Father, Su Jinshang, and myself. Exquisite California-style cuisine was spread across the table, yet the atmosphere was stiflingly heavy. Father's aged hands rested on the tabletop, his brow etched with weariness. Weya, Jinyang did wrong and deserves punishment. But he is, after all, your older brother, flesh and blood of the Su family. Could you, for the sake of our blood ties, leave him a way out? I held my glass, my fingertips turning slightly cold. Dad, I was the one targeted, and my 2 children were the ones harmed. He Jingyao died because of this conspiracy, and Layla is still undergoing treatment in a psychiatric facility. If I compromise, to whom can the deceased and the traumatized children turn for justice? Su Jinshang spoke up from the side. Dad, the law relies on evidence. Family sentiment alone can't erase the harm done. If we withdraw the evidence privately, there's no guarantee he won't take such reckless risks again in the future. Father let out a long sigh and said no more. It was a quiet, oppressive meal. As I was leaving the family estate, my father called out to me and handed me a document. It was a supplementary agreement to the family trust, allocating additional assets specifically to secure the future education and living expenses of Hikai and Ian. As a father, I failed to raise Jinyang properly. Consider this a measure of compensation for the children, he said, his voice hoarse. I accepted the document without saying much. Blood ties cannot be erased, yet the harm inflicted was all too real. Thanksgiving arrived before I knew it. In previous years, the social circles of the wealthy would have been abuzz with lavish banquets and cocktail parties. This year, however, I declined every social invitation. Simple festive decorations adorned the courtyard, and the rich aroma of roasting turkey wafted from the oven. We had invited Su Jinshang's family over. Around our modest dining table, there was no room for schemes or rivalry, only relaxed, casual conversation. After dinner, the children chased each other around the yard. Su Jinshang and I stood on the terrace, feeling the evening breeze carry the scent of the sea. The prosecution has finalized the charges in Su Jinyan's case, he said quietly. The sentence won't be light. As for the He family business, I've severed ties with the Lee group. We've terminated all previous collaborations involving Leo's side and switched to an import-export venture with Mrs. Zhao's family, effectively repaying that old favor. I gazed at the twinkling city lights in the distance. Everything is finally settled. But what are your plans now? With such a massive stake in the company, plenty of people in our circle are already asking if you intend to remarry. Su Jinshang looked at me. I shook my head gently and smiled. I have no desire to enter another marriage based on interests. In the past, I accepted an arranged marriage for the sake of my family, enduring betrayal, conspiracies, and life-or-death crises. From now on, I live only for myself and my 2 children. I can place the shares in a trust. I plan to make time to take the kids traveling. Late at night, the guests departed, and the house returned to quiet. I went to the children's bedroom and tucked them in. Kai was fast asleep, his sketchbook lying flat beside his pillow. Ian was hugging his football plushie, breathing steadily and peacefully. Stepping out of the bedroom, I stood alone before the floor-to-ceiling window. Looking back on the journey, the engagement, the betrayal, the schemes, the deaths, the battle for shares, I had weathered countless storms. I had been treated as a bargaining chip, plotted against, and exploited, yet I had never allowed myself to become a pawn at the mercy of others. Wealth and equity were merely armor to protect those I loved, not the ultimate answer to life. Outside the window, the lights of San Francisco stretched all the way to the Pacific coast. In the days ahead, I would no longer need to tread carefully or play games with others. Simply cherishing the innocence right before me and holding on to our hard-won peace was enough.